Welcome to yet another fine Sunday evening. Today we'll be painting some more miniatures. This Wednesday, I started working on Santiago from the Malifaux crew called The Family, and Friday I just got a little inspired, so I finished him and was quite pleased with the result. So this means that we will be moving on to new, maybe not better things, but at least different things. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be painting, well, not my mind, although that is an option. I just found this recently and wanted to share it because that's pretty much feels like the inside of my head most days. It's great fun, lots of things to explore and work with, but also a little confusing from time to time. But anyway, on to the painting. We'll hopefully at least get started on 2 miniatures today. One of them being an Enslaved Nephilim. And again, we're staying in the Malifaux world here. So the Enslaved Nephilim is, I guess, I can't remember the lore from Malifaux, but basically it's some kind of essentially fallen angel that they've captured. The fallen angels were not good. What does painting your mind look like? Painting the outside of your head, putting a paintbrush in an ear. No, actually not a paintbrush, just an airbrush. You just put the airbrush in one ear and spray paint in. And then it just get jumbled around in my head. You can spray from the other ear, maybe through the nose. And that's when you get that kind of color thing that you saw in the picture. But the Nephilim are, if you go into sort of the old Jewish, the Hebrew Bible, The Nephilim were probably fallen angels, sometimes also referred to as giants. Not referred to as giants, but seen to be or interpreted as giants. So we have here a fallen angel. You can see it lost its wings. It's a fairly simple model. So, and I'm gonna cheat. Of course, I'm gonna cheat. So I'm just gonna give it a really simple paint job. And while we're doing that, or after we're doing that, I think I will actually. Well, I have, just like Wednesday, we have a few choices. We have Perdita herself. She's the leader of this crew. I love the broad-brimmed hat, and I also love the fact that it's just her face is more or less hidden underneath the hat. And again, since we're doing tabletop ready miniatures, expect to see her from this angle most of the time. So I'm not gonna do a fully detailed head. It will get some color and shading. So that's one option. We also have Nino with his Gatling gun, and it's basically just one large cloak. And I'm wondering if he should actually get sort of the same brownish color that I used for the cloaks for the other ones, or if I should actually give him a black coat, simply just to make him even more sinister and sneaky. I will be incorporating the red color that I like to use, so that's probably going to be his scarf, maybe the thing, whatever, on his hat, small stuff like that, and of course the pants will be the sort of khaki grayish brown I'm going for. Lastly, we have Francisco in his stately pose, just holding his gun. He's got an extra sword that goes here, but I wanted to paint the coat before messing around with adding the sword and all that. You see there's a small inset here where the sword goes up. I don't think he's actually holding the hilt, but he might be. So it'll just go down there, and he is very much a close combat dude. So that's one option. I just realized that maybe I shouldn't have glued his hat on. So these are the three options we have in addition to the Nephilim. So anyone, we give it a few minutes to think, and just let me know where you want me to start. I mean, I'm gonna paint all of them at some point anyway. Hey Bill, welcome. We have Canadians on the line. But before we start painting, I want to show two things. One of them being the finished Papaloco, guy with the Gatling gun. Okay, Nino it is. Papaloco turned out really nice. I managed to sort of semi-dissolve and scrape the paint off the edge. Again, if you look at the Nephilim, you see that when I did the priming, there was some overspray on the edge of the base. Thank you, Bill. I'm quite pleased with how he turned out. So yeah, and Elena's watching on our TV and says hi. Hello, Elena. Glad to have you on board. And I think you have probably all actually seen him, because I posted him both in the IP Discord, but also I sent you, I think I sent you a direct image, but simply to brag about how awesome it was. But anyway, thank you. At least here again, you can see him. You can see when I'm rotating him, because the pictures don't really show all of that. And I'm really, really happy with how he turned out. Especially the red, both on his coat, but also on his scarf. It's the same red, but it's slightly more highlighted and built up on the scarf than on his vest. But I'm really, really pleased with this. That's one of the best paint jobs I've ever done. So yeah. So I'm happy, and I will get to play with him tomorrow. I will hopefully be beating the crap out of one of my friends. And his response to them being painted is that, yeah, well, we know how it is with painted miniatures. They just play better. So, the Nephilim. I've considered doing a red paint job on him. I mean, he's mostly skin. Just to run through him. He's got his loincloth here. He's got his shackles. Somewhere I probably have the chain that actually should be glued in between his legs, and not in between his legs in that way, Brett. I know what you're thinking. You have such a dirty mind. You and Modifian should get along quite nicely. So he has his loincloth, he has some wristbands or straps or whatever, he has the chain obviously, and then just his hair. That's basically all he has. No, the different colors, the different things on him. Then I've added in some pieces of cork, again to give the bases what I want them to be, sort of have a common theme for the base. In this case I'm doing the rocks, and then I'm doing sort of different what is it called? Like I did the grass here. I did the brown stuff as dirt for Papa Loco. But when I looked at Santiago here, I really didn't want to add more brown to the miniature because there was more than plenty. Papa Loco at least has the straight jacket. Oh, you have a pure mind. I am sure your mind is very pure. I bet it's even so pure that it's wrapped around, caused an integer overflow, and returned to being as impure as possible. So, but anyway, the bases. I did the grass here to get a little bit of contrast and a little bit of sort of POW-ish color. I don't know what I'm going to do with the Nephilim. I would like to keep him sort of a little grim, a little bleak. So probably I've got some basic material that might work nicely for it. This stuff here. It's basically small, sort of black specks. Character assassination. Or you could call it the truth. You are not a crook, you are so a crook. But for the actual Nephilim itself, as I said, I considered doing his skin red, in the red color, to keep to that theme overall. But at the same time, though I can't have the truth, my mind would explode even more than it already does. But basically what I want to do instead is I want to keep the red color for his loincloth and the small bandages or bands, whatever he has on his forearms here. Because in that way, it's going to be like the scarf on Santiago or the gun holster, stuff like that. They're sort of accessories, small pieces of clothing that becomes red in this crew. I think that's going to be a good way. So what am I going to do about the Nephilim? I could do sort of a brownish thing, but I think I'm actually going to go for a very cheaty way of doing it. I'm gonna basically just gonna make him blue. And Modifian is here. So now that Modifian is here, Britt, you no longer wear the crown of having, you know, the most dirty mind. And also we just need to do a quick plug. This is the lid of my wet palette. Yeah, you talk about loincloths, and yeah, that looks familiar, doesn't it? Doesn't it, Bill? Okay, I just realized something about myself. The last few times when I've painted, and I eventually turns my wet palette into a bit of a mess, but it was just rotated 180 degrees, and apparently I have the kind of mind that gets really frustrated with having looked at the pattern of colors and then all of a sudden seeing it rotated 180 degrees. So anyway, back to the Nephilim. What we're doing today to cheat is basically just give him a blue shading with some wash, touching up the wristbands and stuff like that, doing the loincloth in red, the shackles metallic. I'm just gonna go plain metallic. Maybe add a little bit of rust if I want, and then do the base. See where we end. So we're playing around with Vallejo's gaming. Don't think I've really used this one that much. Should I thin it? I don't know. Probably should a little bit. So let's get some thinner medium, maybe some matte medium as well. No, but it was really wonderful this Friday evening. I've just been playing, just chatting with the IP. The IP is the Incorrigible podcast. I am not good at saying that, sorry. The Incorrigible podcast, which is a D&D 5th edition campaign being recorded, edited, and broadcast by, among others, Bladio22, aka Bill. And if you like any kind of good audio play, or the old radio plays, and just like good story, or if you have the slightest interest in seeing what all this role-playing stuff is about, I recommend you give them a listen. They have tons and tons of material out there about 111 episodes, I think, in total of the actual play sessions. And then you have the after parties, you have one shots, you have all the cool stuff. They have guest NPCs, and basically they're also just really awesome people, cool guys. So well, Bill, I appreciate your hard work. I appreciate all the stuff you do. Just giving it to others like that just melts my heart. So, where are we today? We are... So, where do we have it? Here. Blue. Lots and lots of blue. Let's see how it goes. And as I said, I will be testing these out tomorrow. Yeah, there's gonna be way too much color in this, but we don't care, because we're just gonna have fun. And I'll actually just have to clean it up and just highlight it a little bit to make him more sort of shaded all over into a white tone. Oh yeah, good thing you mentioned that, Bill. The IPers are about to give away a lot of cool stuff, specifically some math rocks. Lots and lots of math rocks. And I do believe, if I understood you correctly, that it is math rocks that you've had specially made for this purpose. So it is not just going to be any old Chesek. Math rocks is, of course, dice for those who are not initiated into the world of role-playing games. So I think you have them sort of custom designed, or I'm guessing what Emily designed them, since she is awesome at doing that. So while we're painting here, we should have maybe a small quiz, because I know most of you watching this. Before that, we're just gonna have a quick note from Bill saying we have a handful of dice companies who very graciously offers to sponsor a few giveaways, so we got a few different prizes to give away, which is bloody awesome. So dice companies making dice for the Incorrigible Party podcast, and the dice are being given away. Follow them on Twitter, follow them on, I think you have YouTube as well, you're here on Twitch. Go look at incorrigibleparty.com, the main website, and you will be able to stay up to date with all the latest news from them. And I think that was the plug for today, Bill. So, in the meantime, we're gonna have a quick pop quiz here, because I know that at least most of you watching this live grew up in what is known completely erroneously as the Western world, which is also a somewhat Christian world, or at least to some degree. Originally speaking, if you look culturally and so on. So the Nephilim, as I mentioned in the beginning, do originate in the Hebrew Bible, or basically the Old Testament. Not getting into math witchery, Modifian. I don't do witchery. I am a magic user. I'm a mage. I thought you knew that. No, but the Nephilim. Can anyone tell me off the top of your heads what the Nephilim are? And he's turning very blue. Why can't I see what is his hand and what is the chain? Well, if I can't see, then whoever is watching the miniature after it's been painted probably also cannot. But we'll add just a slight bit of blue in there. Norse mythology? Nope, nope, nope. You have all just failed Bible school or Sunday school, whatever it's called. The Nephilim have been referred to as two different things. One of them being a race of giants. It's mentioned in Genesis, and the other one is the other mention they have is as fallen men, or another place, fallen mighty men or mighty ones. So the general conclusion, whatever. Oh, much better camera. Which one of them, Modifian? Because I've made some changes to my setup. Except I actually hadn't. I had the same setup the last time you watched. It just rearranged the zoom and stuff. No, but basically the Nephilim. Nephilim are, I will quote, sorry, from Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown. So yeah, Old Bible, Old Testament, full of sex. Awesome stuff. Apparently the sons of God, whoever they were, had a lot of sex with a lot of human women and bore a lot of children that turn into other stuff, things, people, I don't know. So yeah, that was a little bit about. The face cam keeps going in and out of blurry. Wow, that is a shame, really. Don't really know what I can do about that. Maybe I think it's because it keeps catching either the camera or me. Can't do a lot about that, except maybe turn it off. But I have a feeling that you wouldn't like that. We need to blue his chest. Yeah. So what else is new? Earlier today I had the pleasure of going to a friend of mine and play a board game called Cloudspire. It's essentially in the sort of League of Legends style, where you have your own fortress, and from that fortress you just spew out a whole bunch of minions, somewhat haphazardly, and they just run over to whoever you've decided to should be your mark, as it's called. So Goliath's grandparents, that might be it, Bill. Wait, but are you saying that I look better if you take off your glasses? Is that really where you want to take this? We could actually, since the wash here is going to take a while, the blue wash is going to take a while to dry. I'm actually going to start a little bit on the base because some of that is going to dry, take a while to dry as well. So might be a good idea to get cracking on that. Go there, we need thinner. So, no, but Cloudspire. As I said, a little bit of a sort of a League of Legends feel to it. Some quote-unquote money you buy from, and you have some control points that you use to buy units, minions, whatever, and then you just spawn them, choose a target, and then the minions will pretty much without any interference from you just run from one end, from your fortress toward whoever you charged. Is that the... yeah, that's probably... yeah, that's the right grave. I just almost thought I picked the wrong grave for the rocks here, but no. But anyway, you're saying the blurb, and that's it. I know, Modifian, I'm just teasing you a little bit. I can do that, can't I? I think that I would actually like him to be on a very grayish base all over to really make his sort of blue sort of stain line. And again, color theory wise, it's probably not good to have a gray backdrop to a blue character, but I want to sort of enforce the fact that, I mean, this is a guy who at some point as a Nephilim fell from heaven, you know, fallen angel, that whole mess. That is bound to be a bleak experience. Or fun, I don't know. If you have any Nephilims watching, please let me know. I'm curious. Was it a rough fall from heaven? Oh shoot, I cannot get to that, can I? Okay, see, the challenges you face when painting miniatures this detailed is that how do you actually get to the part you need to paint without hitting the rest of the miniature? That seems to work. No, but if any Nephilim are watching this, please let us know about your experiences falling from heaven. So what I'm thinking is a bleak experience, and I want to make that shine through, so he's not going to get, you know, bright shiny colors. He's not going to look happy in any way. So I'm just going to go for gray bleakness. Of course, that probably also means that he's not going to play well when I use him, which is a pain in the rear end, but I'll just have to do. Oh, hey, Elana. Yeah, Bill mentioned that. I appreciate you joining and watching on the TV. That is so wonderful. I hope you both had a great weekend with lots of fun stuff going on. While you puzzle, history lessons with Skjern. Yep, that is true. I don't know if what I'm saying is always, you know, completely accurate, but it is as close to it as I can ever make it. Okay, so miniatures that crouch are really annoying to paint because they are so close to the ground, and they have this, so they cover a lot of the ground and a lot of the base, and it's just annoying. But there we go, that was part of it. Yeah, we need some more blue. But again, basically this is just to give the base a solid color that we can build on from here. It's gonna get another layer or two as we go along. And that'll have to do for now. Disclaimers. Well, I'm an engineer. Of course I'm gonna have to do disclaimers. But Lena, what's the motive of your latest puzzle? If you don't mind sharing that with the class. motif, or maybe it's the motive, because maybe a puzzle is actually a criminal mastermind, just lurking, waiting for, biding its time, waiting for the right moment to spring out of the box and do horrible stuff. You never know. So, well, yeah, speaking of disclaimers, I should put in the usual plug about the music. We are, of course, listening to the talented Adrian von Ziegler, who is a German musician, and not only is he so absolutely very talented at actually making music, he's also so awesome that he allows you to use at least some of it. You can check his YouTube videos. You can use it for free on your streams, both on YouTube and Twitch, even if your streams are monetized. If you have other projects, he will require some kind of royalties, but I think anything non-profit, you can use it. Anyway, go look him up. It's great background music for studying, for role-playing games, for basically most things. And there's a lot of it. He's done so many different ones. Which reminds me that I actually tried setting up something where you can have a small widget that allows you to see what song is currently playing, but then I forgot completely and utterly everything about it and didn't set it up. So there, a little bit more on the base. So, oh, don't give Elena nightmares about her puzzles. It's puzzles. Who could possibly get nightmares about them? I mean, it's not like they're scary or dangerous or anything, are they? Just need to just spread this out a little bit. It was pooling a little bit wrong, obscuring some details on the rocks. We cannot have that. Do not obscure the details of the rock. People will get very frustrated. So, now while this dries off just a bit, some of the blue still looks a little, what's it called? Wet. We will give Nino some color. So, and again, I actually think that, like Santiago, wherever he went, I'm gonna do the brown coat on him, on Nino as well. Just metallic Gatling gun. Yeah, should be good. But we also need the khaki. Where did I put it? I actually tidied up my desk after painting Friday night with the result that now I can't find anything. Even though I tried to sort of find a way to sort my paints, apparently it was not a good way of sorting it. There we go. So, I feel like I should be saying something here. Just mixing up some paint for his pants. And, ooh, he's got nice boots on. I think I'm actually gonna make his boots black to make them stand out a little bit. And I'm also, for his base, I'm gonna use around to make it look like he's not sort of standing on pavement or rocks or anything like that. He'll be out in the bushes waiting to shoot you. One of the things in game is that he kind of works like a sniper, some skills in that direction, which I find somewhat hilarious considering the fact that he's running around with a Gatling gun. I've mentioned this before, I know, but the concept is just, to me, really, really fun and amusing. Well, I don't know how amusing it is to talk about, no. Fictional characters killing each other. Remember, fictional characters, and it's fun, and it's a game. But being a sniper with a Gatling gun, you're not going to be very quiet once you start shooting, but up until that point, I think you're going to be fine. Also, it does remind me of the old Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, first edition role-playing game, where the base concept, unlike D&D where you have classes, you don't have that in Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. Instead, you have careers. And a career is basically what you're supposed to, well, be doing, really. But since some of them are rat catcher or servant or things like that, it can be a little difficult to combine that with an adventuring career. But one of the advanced careers in that game was actually just called an assassin. And what I really liked about it, and what really made me think about it in this way, was that yes, assassins do have a tendency to be sort of stealthy, sneaky killers, and it was that, could very much do that. However, the assassin here was also aimed at just being proficient with killing people, period, in any way possible. So that was the class that got, I think, the most weapons unlocked, most weapon proficiencies, lots of bonuses and all that. So you could be an assassin running around with a two-handed sword and a crossbow. Well, crossbow would be an assassin's weapon, I guess. Or gunpowder weapons, which they have, so flintlock pistols and all that. So yeah. That's where my mind went. To assassins in the old world. As some of you may have realized, I'm a very big fan of the old world from the Warhammer universe, Games Workshop's fantasy world. And I'm not so much a big fan, to be honest, of the Warhammer games, Warhammer 40,000, the old Warhammer Fantasy Battlers now. They rebooted parts of it, or evolved the world really into Age of Sigmar. And I've tried that once, and it was fun, and I enjoyed playing with some of my friends from work. But there's always been something with the Games Workshop line of games that has just always seemed a little bit off. It's like way too much depends on rolling a bunch of dice 6 and usually missing a lot. So I don't really think the game rules for the games are very good. I think some of them are acceptable, others are downright annoying, and yeah, that's a pet peeve, and that's a rant for another day, I think. But the world itself, the old Warhammer world, I really love the work they put into that in the old days. You have essentially medieval Europe. You have the feudal states. You have the concept of sort of different, they're called elector counts in the Warhammer world, but sort of feudal states or duchies in many ways. Some of them are called duchies, and you have your dukes and your duchesses and all that. But you also have everything combined into the empire. And the empire is just a grim place to be. Because, yeah, sure, I mean, medieval ages were hard on the average person. But here you add in the extra bonus of having all manner of dangers and people, both monsters as well as just humans, trying to make life better for themselves, I guess, but that almost often comes at the expense of others. So you'll have internal strife, you'll have all the politics you would expect from a medieval setting, a feudal setting like that. And then you also have the hidden things like necromancers working from the depths of their cellars or whatever. And then, of course, you have the entire concept of chaos being a thing. You have warp space, whatever you want to call it, the astral plane. That's basically filled with chaos. And sometimes that chaos leaps into the real world and manifests. And there are different factions in that in that area as well. You have the four larger ones that are well known. In the old days, they also had a fifth chaos god whose main purpose was actually to hunt down the other chaos gods. And of course anyone else getting in the way, because hey, all those pesky humans, they're just really just a nice little snack to eat along the way. So then of course you have strife among the different elector counts and duchies, and that's not too bad in the world as I recall. It may have changed after Sigmar reappeared, sort of the father god, one of many gods they have. But what they also have, which I'm very much sort of into at the moment, are the Skaven, which are rat men. And these rat men are all over the place. They dig caves, they dig tunnels, they dig cave urns to make Leland happy if he's watching. And they are everywhere, and they are so horrible, and they're basically rat men about 3-4 feet high. And they're just crazy, and there's so many of them, just like rats in general. They breed like crazy. They're not necessarily bright, they're not necessarily very powerful in themselves, but when you have this tide, a horde of Skaven coming, then it's just really, really difficult. And the computer game Vermintide, it's called Warhammer Vermintide 2 is the one I'm playing at the moment. It has so much atmosphere. They've really made the world come alive with the scenery they've done, and it's just a pleasure running around in all the old houses and, well, destroyed towns. And then all of a sudden you'll hear a war horn sounding in the distance, and just know that you're gonna get swamped with chaos men, undead, Skavens, and they're just all over the place, and they're just really cool. Here's rats and starts listening carefully. Oh dear, yeah, rats are interesting. So yeah, but the Skaven, they of course have their they use the substance in the old world called warpstone, which is chaos that has run out from the warp and manifested physically in the real world. It manifests usually as small lumps of blackish stuff. And remember, all of this was thought up, most of it at least, back in the 80s. So a lot of this really feels like sort of the whole nuclear scare that was going on back then, with radioactive material being, oh, it will give you mutations and it will make you grow extra heads and all those things. Well, they took that idea, or at least I'm guessing they took that idea, and actually made it happen. So the warpstone, some of the Skaven will just eat it for random mutations, which is always fun, and they will get extra arms and legs and faces. I was just about to say face, all of that. So it's kind of cool. Some of the sorcerers or warlocks they use this warpstone to fuel. Thank you, Modifian. When Ellie gets older, you can just let her listen in as well, and then you can stay up all night comforting her when she gets nightmares. No, but the but the warp zone eating that, and then you're using that to fuel. Part of it is to fuel their magic, just as spellcasters, but they also build weird machinery. Like they have what's essentially a huge flamethrower, but it fires warp fire. So it'll be green, horrible, really nasty stuff just being shot at you, or they'll put it into small glass globes and throw it at you like gas grenades. So they've added a lot of those things back in the Warhammer role-playing game, which was really fun to use when you were a game master. And now we turn it all the way back to role-playing games, as we always do. Because I used to, I've had several groups running around in the old world. And one of them, we had a particularly stubborn dwarf. And, all dwarves are stubborn, to use that sort of fantasy trope and all that, which we shouldn't in this day and age where anyone can be anything, and of course they can. But the classic stubborn dwarf fighter, large armor and everything, and he was in that party as well. Of course he was. At some point they're being swamped by Skaven outside an abandoned inn, I think, and what was the setup? I think there were about 3 or 4 of them, and they were just walking down there, and all of a sudden all these Skaven just start pouring, a horde of them. It's an endless onslaught and rush, and this dwarf, naturally armed with an axe, decides to go for the Warpfire team, because the Warpfire teams, at least in the role-playing, in the fantasy battle back then, and that was the idea I copied, one running around with the actual gun, and then its partner running around with a huge canister of this Warpfire thingy, whatever, liquid they used. And then they had a small tube going between the two. And then I guess you can figure out where I'm headed with this story, because what does the dwarf do? He goes for the pipe, tube, whatever, between the Warpfire thrower itself and the guy with the huge barrel of Warpfire liquid goo thing. Think napalm, but he had that on his back, and not surprisingly, he manages to hit his target. But what happens when you have the small glow light and everything from a flamethrower, and all of a sudden you not just cut the feed, but you physically cut the fuel line. You essentially have all of this Warpfire exploding everywhere, including any volatile or any open flame or whatever, and effectively just blowing up everything. Almost including the dwarf that was standing right next to it, because an axe is a melee weapon and he was up close, so it just said bam, and he blew up. Well, almost. I mean, he was tough enough to actually make it out alive. But to make things a little fun, and the player, I should say, was having a blast with what I did to him, to his character, because what happens if you're wearing a chainmail and all of a sudden you're exposed to extreme heat? I mean, we're talking really, really warm. And let's look aside the fact that, physically speaking, biologically speaking, I'm drifting off camera all the time. You should probably evaporate yourself. But again, role-playing games are not really known for their realism when it comes to stuff like damage and damage rolls and resisting evaporating when exposed to extreme heat. Severely damaged, but we kind of figured that with that kind of blast and that kind of heat that's involved, then the chainmail he was wearing probably just burned into his skin. He later had it removed, but effectively, since the cloth underneath it, the padded armor underneath the chainmail, since that also kind of sort of burned off, evaporated, whatever, we decided that it would actually make sense that his entire, well, not his entire body, but his torso, arms, probably some of his legs, probably also his butt, was completely covered in chainmail shaped scars from that day on. His face was mangled. I think that was also the time where one of the other people in the group, one of the other characters, he's seeing this, and they're outside on the courtyard of an inn, I think it was, and he just sees this crazy dwarf chopping over the warp fire fuel line. And then the other guy, what he did was just sort of, okay, I'm standing right next to the well. I just jumped backwards into it. He didn't even look. He just kind of sort of let himself fall because he figured the fall was probably less dangerous than the explosion that was about to come. And it shows two interesting things that I'll try to analyze a little bit, because I like to talk about game mastering in general on this channel, and I also like to just go back in time and analyze some of the stuff I've done to see how things turn out. And one of the things I take out of that experience, the Warpfire team, and why this guy would allow himself to chop, one of them, the dwarf, chopping over the fuel line, and the other one just throwing himself backwards into the well. I think a lot of that comes from us playing games that were deadly. The characters could easily die, especially if they did something really stupid, like jumping into a well. However, we also wanted games that were fun to play and had a lot of, I'm gonna say acrobatics, though that's not the right term. But yeah, I think you get the point. It should be fun. It should have adventure. It should have, what am I missing up now? It should be, there should be things happening that made for great stories. And so what if the rules say you probably die from the fall damage if you jump down a well? That concept of going, oh, he's gonna explode, I'm just dropping backwards, is a good story. If it ends with the character dying, then the story also ends there. If you just falls down and just hits the water, doesn't hit the sides, maybe takes a little bit of damage, so he's just a little beat up when he finally arrives, but he shouldn't drown, he shouldn't knock himself unconscious, nothing damaging in that way, just minor setbacks. And the reason they did these kind of stunts was that they knew that if we had a good story, I probably wouldn't kill them. So, and that was around the time where we started really sort of playing differently, because in the beginning we did a lot of the kind of game master versus players, where you have players of a certain power level, character level in these games, whatever. It's Warhammer, so it's their third, fourth career, whatever. So they should be able to handle this if they've made tactical decisions regarding their progress through the game. But we also started going, yeah, but that's if you're doing it sort of by the numbers, instead of talking about what makes sense for this character. Does it make sense to maybe take a few levels or skill levels in, I don't know, bluff or dancing or social skills, or things that can be used for other things than just strictly fighting? So we started, not necessarily that consciously at that time, but that was sort of where the shift in how I played. Doesn't work. There we go. It should be in focus now. There was a bit of a shift there, and over a few years we changed from this can we kill each other kind of game style into a more purely collaborative storytelling through the games. And yeah, we still roll dice. We still like the randomness of that. We still do all these things, and yes, characters can die once in a while, but it's not just, oh, we're going into a dungeon to explore things or do whatever, and then there was just this random goblin, and oh, it was a little lucky and it rolls and you failed a saving throw or two, so now you're dead. Because those stories are never satisfying, not to anyone, not least of all, at least I've found or come to believe, least of all myself as a game master. And that shift was really cool, because it meant that people would not actually start looking at the numbers saying, wait, can I actually survive a fall into a well? Maybe it makes more sense to take the fire damage because I am 15 feet away or whatever. They just actually lived out their characters and went, okay, I am standing here, this is happening, what would my character do realistically? Because the character wouldn't realistically look down the well to see how far down it is, and then do a mental calculation, try to do a volume measurement of the barrel of warp fire fluid blowing up. You would basically just go, I need to get away from this. What's the fastest way down the well? And that shift, since we later on, we sort of formalized some of these things to the extent that they can be formalized. We came up with sort of the general setting that your character can very much die if you do something stupid, or if in a boss fight or sort of end game fight, yeah, then you can die basically just from the combat. You can get unlucky there, but a random bandit on the road or anything like that is not going to kill you. One or two failed climbing checks while doing normal stuff is not gonna make you drop to the ground like a rock and die, because there's no fun in that. I mean, take a look at some of the large movies, books, whatever, like The Lord of the Rings. I should give a spoiler alert, because people are apparently so hung up on spoilers that even old stuff mustn't be spoiled. So if you haven't seen or read The Lord of the Rings, then please do not listen to what I'm saying now, it will be spoiled. But when Boromir dies in the beginning, he's shot by what I've always seen as tree trunks being fired at him from the Uruk-hai's really, really powerful bow. Now that is a way to go. I mean, that is a hero's death. That is an epic death in that sense. If he had just stumbled on his way down, running after the Uruk-hai or whatever, stumbled, fallen, broken his neck, that would be very anticlimactic. I mean, try imagining that scene when he's running through the forest, and then imagine how it would look and how you would feel in the cinema when you saw it if he had just fallen, hit his head on a rock and died. I don't know. You think about it, and then think back to all the games of D&D that you used to play, or any other role-playing game, where the game master will go, oh, so you're doing this? Well, make an athletics roll. Oh, roll the natural 1. That's a critical failure. Well, I'm sorry, you stumble. Okay, take some damage. Oh, wow, you took 10 points of damage from your head hitting the rock. Oh, and you only had 5 points left. Well, I'm sorry, you are now dead. How would that make you feel? Compared to the Uruk-hai fires about 400 pounds of solid wood straight into your chest. What do? I keep fighting. Okay, you keep fighting. Then what happens? The Uruk-hai fires another 400 pounds of solid wood into your chest. Now what do? You know what? I'm gonna fight some more, and I'm gonna take the third or fourth shot. I can't remember how many times he's actually hit. And then he doesn't actually die. Then he just goes down, because he is really badass fighter. Yeah, so he couldn't take it, obviously, but it gives him, and more importantly, it gives his death a purpose. It lets the hobbits get away. It lets him, because he survives with these grievous wounds instead of just instant death, it gives him time to tell Aragorn what had happened. And he actually gets some redemption from that. That's sort of the classic redemption stereotype right there. So there, that's things we wanted to do, and we didn't want to do the very deadly games where if you didn't fully optimize your characters, then you would just be run over by the next encounter you came into contact with. And this was somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago. And that shift in, I guess it's a shift in purpose of the games we were running. It still runs through today, and that's why when, for instance, this summer when I picked up D&D again, 3.5 for one group, 5e for another group, I just kind of went, yeah, but I'm not going to use the whole challenge rating system for much, and I'm not going to use the, exact XP per monster thing as well, and nah, I'm not really going to use that in detail. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try to make some really good and interesting stories that my players want to come back to. Some stories that they want to keep working on, and some stories where, and this is a really important part for me when I'm game mastering, I want to create stories where the players want to help bring them to life. I don't want to go through a monologue like I'm doing here when I'm a dungeon master or game master. I want the players to be as active as possible. I want the players to explore the world. I want the players to come up with ideas for what they want to do. And then I just basically want the world to react to what they're doing. And my experience is that if you do that, you can call it kind of reactive game mastering instead of proactive, and then we're into the gray area of modern words of popular words when you're going to job interviews. Don't say to a job interview that you're reactive instead of proactive. You will probably not get the job, because people recruiting always want to look for individualists who work well in teams, have experience with 5-year-old technology, and by the way, are in their early 20s. So I've seen a lot of really, really silly job ads, including the one that actually required more years of experience in a specific technology than the age of that technology. I shit you not. That actually happened some years ago. And no, I don't think it was a trick question to weed out the ones who actually didn't know it. At least if they did, they lost some. I'm pretty sure they lost some good candidates. I'll not do an evaluation if I was one of them or not, but I do know that I just couldn't really take it seriously enough to actually apply for the job. So yeah, that went all over the place as usual. But while on the topic of role-playing games and chatting and all those things, there is one other thing that we could probably do that might be fun. And that is talk a little bit about a concept that I hadn't heard of until yesterday, I guess. And it's a concept that didn't as such blow my mind because it's very close to some things we sometimes do. It's a concept called kind of West March campaign, which is apparently a campaign that someone ran a long time ago, a guy named Ben Robbins and Matthew Colville, which is one of the sort of famous online D&Ders. Sorry, I got distracted. I'll be back then. No, but Mal Colville promoted the idea of the West March campaign. I'm sorry, I cannot pronunciate that correctly, so my tongue sort of just ties up in my mouth. But the idea is essentially that instead of the game master, finishing off everything in the game world and making everything come to life and all those things, then the players have a large responsibility for saying where they want to go, what they want to do. And on top of that, you also make a setup where it's not a fixed group. So you don't have your game night where you have the same 4 people coming over and the same 4 characters playing a continuation of the same story. Instead, you just make this open sandbox world, a little bit like we had Modifian in the Forbidden Lands, where you just travel around. But instead of one group traveling, it is actually anyone can pick any of their characters. Of course, the characters have to be made by the rules, blah, 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 the usual stuff. But then you just pick whichever character you want to play with, and whichever group of players you want to play with, and whichever DM you want to play with, and you start doing it. You just set a date. And that gives sort of a huge pile. Seems wrong. Stockpile seems even worse. But you have this huge pool, is the word we're looking for. You have this huge pool of characters that you can just bring into any game. And now the thing about that is that I need to find my Nuln Oil. Now, small detour. Nuln Oil, a surprisingly good shade for the color red. I was surprised when I figured out that you could do it, but it works really well. So, where was I? Yes, West March. So doing that means that you basically just have a huge open sandbox world that anyone can go into, create a character, and say, hey, I'm up for a game at some point. And then instead of the DM having everything planned out and having a full overview of all the different factions and what they're doing and all that, it becomes sort of a collaborative exploration of the world, where a large part of what the players do, or at least are supposed to do, is to share their adventures with one another. So let's say that Modifian, Brit, and AJ go out on an adventure one day in this world. You're all role players, so I know you could do this. And another time it will be Bill and me and some other people. Some of my old game group want to join in. And then through the wonders of modern technology, they will have a forum or a Discord server or one of the sites like called World Anvil or Obsidian Portal, whatever you have, where you share your stories, you create an adventure log, you have maybe a wiki page where you fill out information about the place you went to. The abandoned keep turned out to be not that abandoned. So after we had been there for a short while, we realized that, yeah, the goblins in the beginning, not a problem. But the bugbears at the lower levels, that was way too much. We just ran away. And then other groups of adventurers will hear about this, and one of them may be sort of saying, hey, if there's one thing I know about bugbears, it is that they stockpile a lot of treasure. I want to go explore that, and I'm more powerful than you guys, so I can actually do this and survive. Does anyone want to come? And then a couple of other people just go, yeah, sure, I want to do that. And they find a DM who sets it up, and they run back in, go essentially into the same adventures, some of the same challenges, but modified with what the other party had done before. I mean, they killed off maybe some of the goblins, maybe the entire tribe, because player characters tend to be homicidal like that. So that kind of idea, and just really letting it, making it possible for the game group to join in and just have people jump around between different game groups, sounds like a really cool idea. It also sounds a lot like something that will turn into a lot of dungeon crawls, which is not my favorite style of playing. But then again, I haven't done it in many years, so it might be fun, and with the right people, everything like this is fun. So the good news is that rumor has it in the Discord, in the Incorrigible Party Discord, that we are actually about to start up a campaign like this, and it can just go on for years, with as long as we have people who want to play and people who want to be DMs. There's no, it won't stop. It'll just keep going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. If you have a small pink rabbit walking across your desk at the moment, you have my permission to give it a sound beating because it deserves it. A little git. So yeah, I guess I'm doing a small plug for the campaign. We will hopefully soon begin. I think it's going to be very chaotic and it's going to be very crazy, and there's going to be some coordination between the DMs about what goes on where. But ideally, I'm kind of the opinion that it's going to be more fun to just, start it off, let people begin to play. And just slowly expand upon the game world in the form of drawing a map, plotting in sites of interest and all that thing. It's one of the concepts again in this world is that you have sort of a secure base, they call it the town in the original material, where you're safe. The monsters cannot come in there. You can buy supplies and all that, but it's so it's a safe haven where you can just relax and heal up and rest and all those things. And then later on, you can go out again once you've done that. Sorry, my mind drifted because I was focusing on the miniature. So we're probably gonna try that at some point. I think it's gonna be cool. And again, as I said, since this will be random combinations of players, random combinations of characters with random DMs, I think it's going to be really difficult to make story-based adventures like this. And that's why I'm thinking that there's going to be quite a bit of dungeon crawly stuff in it. But I will, of course, do my best to not just make dungeon crawls. I will make some other things, and you can drop hints in different locations that can be used other places like that. So in many ways it's a little bit like modern MMOs, I guess. But what I'm mostly interested in seeing is to actually start playing with a lot more players, because that's always fascinating, and it is a huge source of inspiration for me to talk to other role players, to hear how they play, what characters are they doing, to play in different groups, to talk to other DMs about how they structure their worlds. And even on points where you don't agree, you always get something out of these talks, at least I do. I don't know if you get anything out of these talks. I like to think you do, because some of you tell me that you do. But in reality, it's again just sharing information, sharing your experiences with the games, and I just think it's going to be cool. It's going to be fun, and most important of all, it's going to mean that we can play a lot more role-playing games, because you can sort of adjust your not your play style. How often you play is basically just a matter of trying to get together a group and a DM. And if anyone's up for it, you can just play. You can play with your same character, or you can have multiple characters in this world. Again, another thing about this world is that, as I mentioned, there's the town, and only one town that's safe, and that's where you always end up again afterwards. Once you've come home from your adventures, that's where you will hide out from the big scary monsters until you've healed up and re-equipped and restocked your healing potions and so on. But in this town, all the other adventurers, the only people who go out into the wilderness are player characters. So you don't have a bunch of NPCs running around messing up things for the different groups. Anything that goes on outside of the town is content created by the players, and of course a little bit by the DMs as well. But it's initiated by a group of players saying, oh, I'm sure that the mountains over there have some interesting keep. Let us go exploring and see what we can find. And then some DM picking up the torch and saying, cool, I've been meaning to do a mountain adventure for a while. Let's go. And they set a date, and grab a few other players if they can. And once they're done, and again, this is really important, I think, for this to work, they share their stories. If you watch Firefly and watch I think it's just called War Stories, where Wash gets really frustrated with Zoe and Mal having so many shared stories that he forces himself into one of the missions, which of course goes horribly wrong and all that. But his main complaint at some point is that they're always going into a battle or into dangerous situation and so on, but they always come back with the stories, and that's the part that gets to him, is that there's some shared stories and between his wife Zoe and Captain Mal. So that's what bugs him. So he wants to have some of those stories, and that's where they run into Nishka as well, and again, and Wash nearly dies and all that. So yeah, he does come back with a story, but he also kind of got a little bit more than what he was bargaining for in the process. But the point here is, coming back with the stories is important. So I'm guessing, writing adventure logs, all those things, sharing rumors, sharing what you found. We found an old book that had this story about an abandoned ship that somehow got stuck in the middle of the desert over there many thousands years ago, when there were still elves roaming the surface or whatever. I'm just making shit up here. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to come across, you can just plan it, and then at a later point, some group of players will go, that ship sounds interesting, I want to go see what's actually there. And then another DM is going to say, oh yeah, cool, I'm up for that. And then they're going to make a desert adventure where they travel out to try and find the ship and all those things. So I think it is going to be really, really fun. And even if we find out that the format isn't working well or whatever, I still think we're all going to have some good experiences out of it. And I know that we're all going to come back with the stories. So yeah. So that was another little thing to share, which kind of reminds me that I should check if someone has actually replied to a comment or question I posted in another Discord. And I think they might. I think that was a yes, so I will interpret it as such, and I will let you know. I also need to get back to the Nephilim where I was starting out. I also need to close the lid on this one. In December, the second or so week of December, during my streams, I've made some of the other Danish miniature painters who are streaming their things have decided to come together and do a shared event where we take a paint starter set, and we paint a mini online with only that starter set. And it's going to be a blast. It's going to be a single model. We're just going to dig into our old stores and find something we can use. And yeah, I think I'm kind of winding down for today, so I'll just end with that plug. And what we will be doing, I'll just grab it right here, is that we will take this one here, the Army Painter. Can I do this without breaking things? I probably can. We're taking the Army Painter starter paint set, and we will paint a miniature using only these colors. You see, you have white and black in the end, we have green, we have a brown, and then we have blue, yellow, red, flesh tone, metal, and then we have a single dark, strong tone, quick shader. So that's going to be our challenge. And then after that, we're going to have a shared session where all of us chip in and do a combined stream and talk about our experiences, what we liked and didn't like about this paint set, the colors, the pigments and all of that. But me being me, I figured that since I, about a year or two ago, actually switched completely away from Army Painter in favor of Malifaux, I will actually be giving away this entire paint set once I'm done. So if you join my stream at that time, and if you answer a few questions or whatever, I'm still fiddling with the details. But if you join the stream and let me know that you want to be in the competition or in the draw for it, you may actually win this entire set. And that is not all. Since we agreed that we would be allowed to use wet palettes, I will also be throwing in this wet palette here from the Army Painter. I'm going to try it out just to see how it works. I'm quite happy with the other one I have, which is, I can't remember the brand. It's called Red something. Red Grass, I think it's called. I'm not entirely sure. But I wanted to try out the Army Painter's wet palette to see how it is. Now, if it is really, really good, then I don't want to give it away. I'm going to keep it for myself. But if I kind of go, it's a good wet palette, but I might as well keep my old one, then I will be throwing in the wet palette as well. So you will get, it has the case for it. In the lid, you can have your brushes and all that. There's going to be the sponge and of course the paper you use for the wet palette for the paint to soak water up through it and keep it wet and keep it alive for a long time. So stay tuned. That was the backside. So stay tuned for my streams in, I think, second week, somewhere between the 12th and 8th to 15th or whatever. You'll figure it out. I'll keep you posted here. So stick around, and you may be able to get a full miniature painting set. This also includes a starter brush. Now the rules for how we're going to paint the miniature, as I said, we're only going to use the paints here. We're only going to use this brush and this wash here. But actually we're going to use our wet palettes because that's a separate tool. But in addition to the starter brush that comes with the paint set, we're only allowed to use one other brush. And I haven't decided yet, but I think I am going for my fine detail Winsor Newton 000 brush, simply to be able to paint details. I think the starter brush in the set here is going to cover the what's called the model itself quite well with base coating and layering, but I really want to be able to just adjust things just slightly, especially since I'm so limited in the number of colors. So other than that, we are not allowed to use any other things. No mediums, no inks of other kinds, no none of our usual stuff, no contrast colors from Citadel, nothing like that. Not entirely sure what we're going to do about the bases, but I guess we can use flux and things like that. Otherwise they're going to be really bland and boring. At least I'm going to push for that. And yeah, so that's the concept. That's the idea. I plan on at least Sunday the 13th, and it's going to be one of the days when I'm streaming this. So 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks, I can't count, 3 weeks from now, I'll be streaming at least part of that. And also, if any of you have any ideas for which model you want me to paint, what style do you want me to paint, a boring space marine, hint hint, very boring space marine, just let me know. If you want me to go fantasy, let me know. I might have my eyes on a few of the Warhammer Underworlds characters and paint some of those up because they're really good quality, they're quick assembly, they have lots of details, and they tend to have poses where it's easy to actually paint them. But if you have any ideas, any suggestions, do not hesitate to let me know. Yeah, I think that was it for me for today. Didn't get as far with the Nephilim because I got sidetracked by Nino and by chatting. But I think we should just slowly wind down and say that I've enjoyed your company as always. It's been really great. And yes, Modifian, it does sound fun. So thank you to the Incorrigible Party for being awesome. Thank you for showing up. And thank you for lurking in the background. I will see you Wednesday.